In this part of our exercise, we will talk about handling exceptions. You may handle exceptions in two ways. The first one is when you enclose your statements that you want to check within TryCatch or TryCatch-Finally blocks. Another option is that you declare that the method might throw a particular type of exception. So first we will do these two parts, and afterwards I will show you how to write your own exceptions. So let us open our Eclipse. I will just close first all our windows here. And now let us create a class that is called TryCatch. So the TryCatch, this TryCatch-Finally or TryCatch block, it allows you to try executing a particular part of the code to see if exception happens. To do this, you have to use some specific syntax, and this syntax looks in the following way. So first, you write your try keyword, then you're opening curly braces, and inside you're putting here the code. Execute some statements. You're putting here some code that you want to try actually. And then follows catch keyword. And inside, so the catch here will actually catch some specific type of exception that you want to catch if this exception is thrown. So inside of your braces, you are putting exception type identifier. And then the name for exception. And here you can put optionally some statements to handle the exception. So you are trying your code that might throw an exception here within the try block. If nothing is thrown, then the program will execute normally. If this code here causes some exception, then you are catching this specific type of exception that you're specifying here inside within this catch block. This helps you to put some specific statements here. For example, you want to save your data that are within a program for this current moment before the program will be shut down. Okay, so let us try some example. I will copy this statement. I will comment it out with control slash, and you can also comment it out with control slash. And now we will write our main method, public static void main, putting our string arguments inside and opening curly braces. So now we have some specific code, and this is integer a, that is an array, is a new integer with 10 elements, And now, for example, we want to access the 11th element and assign the value 9 to this element. So if we execute this code now, we see that we have an exception array index out of bounds exception on the line 11. So this is our main code. So now you want to handle this exception, and you want to handle this exception with try-catch. So the code that might throw an exception, you are putting into try block, try, and we will move it to the right. And now your code is now in a try block. And next we are writing the catch, and inside of your curly braces, first we are putting here exception type identifier. So this exception type identifier, this is the exception that you want to catch, and this should be exactly the name of this particular exception. So here you see that our exception here is array index out of bounds exception. We are copying this exception title and putting here inside. The next, name for exception. So this is the name that you are giving to this exception here for your code. And this is usually, if you have only one exception, the E is used. And optionally, you can put here inside some statements. We want to print here some information to our console, print out system.println. And we want to show the message that exception is of type array index out of bounds exception. Actually, you can put any message that you want. And now we will execute this code. And what we see that our message is now written here. And what we have done, we have handled our exception within our try-catch block. Sometimes you can have multiple exceptions for the same code. So let us consider multi-catch example. Let us create a new class that is called Multicatch with our main method. So let us copy now the try-catch syntax. I will make it nicer. So here we see this is our normal try-catch. In multi-catch case, you have here one more catch with the same syntax, and we will put here closing curly brace. So important is here to remember that in this case you can handle two different exceptions, exception 1 and exception 2, and in this case the name that you give to those exceptions, they also should be different. I will comment this now out, our syntax, and let us try the following code in our main statement. So we are writing our try block first. We want to print to the console integer, parsing integer, and inside we have some arguments. So this is some example code. First closing and second closing. Yep, right. And now we are putting the catch. Here the first is array index out of bounds. Let us maybe let us first execute it in this way, and then we will receive our errors here inside. So you see array index out of bounds exception. So now we are taking this back, and now we are writing here the name of our exception here, and we are giving our name to it, and we have some print statement inside. System out print line, and we want to print to our console missing or invalid input. Simultaneously, you want to handle second exception, and then you're writing again catch, and the second exception that we want also to handle in this case is number format exception. Number format exception. And here you have to write another name. So let us call this NFE, and we will just copy, for example, in this way, the code. So this is the first option, how to handle two exceptions within one code. In cases like this, when you have actually the same statements that should be written within your catch blocks, you can make a shortcut. So I will copy this and we'll comment this out. So what you can do, you can use the following syntax. Let's first start with syntax. Try, opening curly brace, you're putting here inside some code, then catch, and now inside you're putting exception 1, then you're putting this sign separating, and exception 2. So these are the names of your exceptions. And the name that you give that is used for both of them. And afterwards you have the exception handler here. So this is the syntax, and this is what we will do now. So we will just use this sign. I will comment this out. So now we will just take this, we will take this completely out, and we are using the first catch by putting the separating sign. First we have our exception number 1, then we are putting our exception number 2 and our E name. So now this is a valid syntax. How to handle multi-catch, how to use multi-catch blocks. and you see the missing or invalid input here as a result. So the following, please remember that the following format will not be valid. For example, if you put here one name and here you are putting another name, this is not valid. Okay, so the first, what you can do, you can use TryCatch or try multicatch. The next option, you can use TryCatch-Finally block. Let us create a new class and see how it works. So TryCatch-Finally is the name of our class, and it works actually the same as our just normal TryCatch. So we will just copy this syntax So when you want to have finally statement, you are just putting this keyword at the end, and here inside you have your statements. So this, when do you want to have here finally? You want to have here finally if you have some statements that have to be executed in any case. So no matter what, do this. This is when you use finally statement. So let us consider the following as example. Suppose we have one array of integers that is called R, and this is an array of size 4. And we are using now TryCatch-Finally block. So we are putting our code that would be usually in our main method with inside of try block. Integer I is now assigned to the third element of an array. Then we have some statement that we want to print to our console. That is inside try block. In our catch block, we want to catch array index of out of bounds exception. Array. Please take attention to the correct spelling of the names of exceptions. This is important for Java, especially which words are written with lowercase and uppercase. Array index out of bounds exception. And in this part, we want to print out. You see, I have here. Okay, now it's right. We want to print here exception caught in catch block. Exception caught in catch block. And finally, no matter what, do this. Also putting this part of the code in curly braces. Also print a statement that is finally block executed. And then we have again some printing statement that is outside try catch finally clause. So let us execute this code. So you see, we are trying to access the third element of array, and this element exists because the size of array is 4, so we have the elements with indices 0, 1, 2, 3, and this is accessed, and then the whole code here in this try is executed inside try block. We have this here. Then catch is not executed because we don't have any exceptions here. Finally code is executed anyway, and we have here finally block executed written to the console, and outside try catch finally clause that we see here. Now let us right here, let's try to access the element that is not possible for our array. And now you see exception code in this way. Exception code in catch block, it means so that this part of the code is never executed. So this statement will never execute as exception is raised by above statement. And this part, this is the rest program that anyway will be also executed. So if you would have tried to do this without try catch, so let us for the second delete it and try to execute this code, you would receive this exception that is thrown now by Java virtual machine, array index of out of bounds exception, and this outside try catch finally clause, it will not be executed. Even if only this part of the program, even if you would like not to execute only this part. So only when you use try, catch, and sometimes finally, if you need it, blocks, only then you can allow your program to be executed in a way that you as a programmer wanted. So this was the first option, how to deal with exceptions. It was about try, catch, finally blocks. The next option, how you can do this in another way, is by throwing an exception. So let us create a new class that is called throw. And for this class, we have a task. Let's imagine that we have, so to say, real-world program. Then in this program, we are checking that the student age. If the student age is less than 12 and weight is less than 40, then our program should return that the student is not eligible for registration. So actually, you could handle this. You can write the program for this task using just if-else statement. However, when you use the exceptions, then you can deal with some incorrect input values or some other exceptions that could be thrown when the code is executed. So let's do this. So first we will write the method that is checking eligibility. So the method is static, and we are putting it, of course, before our main method. Static void that is called check eligibility, and we are just doing the task what is here. So we're checking two variables. The first one is age and the second one is weight. And our condition was that if the student age is less 12 and weight less than 40, then our program should return. Okay, so if age is less than 12 and weight is less than 40, then we could use system out print line. So first let's do it in a way that we're using only our control flow syntax. System out print line, student is not eligible for registration. And our else in the opposite case, the student entry is valid. And in our main class, we want first to print to the console, welcome to the registration process line, welcome to the registration process. And then we want to check eligibility. That is, we are calling our method check eligibility. And we are checking this method. Well, we are calling this method with two integers, as we have written here. So if you will put your cursor on this method, you will also be able to read that this method needs two integers. This is in the case very useful in case when your method that you are calling now is hidden somewhere in other classes, and you don't want to waste your time to look what kind of parameters this method needs. So you just put here your cursor on this method and you need it here. So now we need to put the first integer for 8. Let us say that the age is 11 and weight is 30. And we want to print to our console, have a nice day, afterwards. So we execute now this code and we see, welcome to the registration process. Student is not eligible for registration. Have a nice day. So this is what we would expect. This kind of code, this is valid. However, it is not elegant. And if we want to use the elegant way of writing this code, then we would throw an exception. If you want to throw an exception, you would put here in if statement, throw exception. So you're using the keyword throw, you're putting the keyword new, and now you're writing the name of exception that you want to raise here. And we want to raise arithmetic exception. The name should match to the name of exception itself. That's why you have to know the names of those exceptions by heart. Well, those that we are handling in our exercise. And now we're executing the code. And we have raised now exception. So before the code was executed and the program and all those statements were printed. So the student entry is valid and have a nice day and so on. It was not eligible. However, now when you're throwing arithmetic exception, in this case, you are printing not only this statement, student is not eligible for registration, but you're also telling the person who was calling this method, this main method, who was running this program, that this is not a this is not the valid inputs for the program, for the method to be successfully executed. Let us open our old code that we were writing at the beginning of this exercise. This was checked exception 1. I will put it here. So here in this code, you see that when you want the method to declare that the method declares that it might throw an exception, then you are using the keyword throws. In this way, you are telling the Java that this method, and the user also, that this method, fall in this case, may throw an exception. In this case, input output exception. You are not handling the exception with keyword throws. You are declaring that the method may raise an exception. When you want to handle it, then you are using throw keywords. So the difference between throws and throw is that with throws, you are declaring that the method might raise an exception. And with the keyword throw, you are handling the exception actually. Another method to handle an exception is to use TryCatch-Finally block. Sometimes you may have a combination of those, and let us have a look on the code checked exception handling. So here you see this is the similar method. You don't declare here that it might throw, you just writing your method, and then you have try and catch blocks. Within try catch, within try block, you're writing the condition, and inside of the condition, you are throwing an exception. And then inside of catch, you are writing here you're catching the exceptions, all exceptions that can be in our exception class. So if you recall our diagram here, we have discussed the checked, unchecked, and error exceptions. So these are the classes, and our which exception was this? It was input-output exception here. In this case, this. However, in our catch exception, we want to catch here all classes of exceptions that are inheriting from our Java language exception class. This is very interesting way to handle it when you don't know which exceptions will be raised, but you know that these exceptions will be checked exceptions, and then you're just cutting all of them with one class. And the last one that I wanted to explain you was writing your own exceptions. So the first two methods of handling exceptions, you would use those methods when you would like to handle exceptions that exception classes that are already there in Java. However, sometimes you would like to write your own exceptions, and let us do it right now. So we are creating a new class that is called No More Carrots Exception. We don't want here to have anything. This is the class No More Carrot Exception. This will be our exception class, the exception that we want to create now. And this exception will inherit from our exception class here. It means that our No More Carrot Exception class will be a subclass of this Java language exception superclass. And if you recall from our last exercise, to use the inheritance, we are using the keyword extends. Extends. And now we are putting the name of the class. You don't have this class here, it is already there. It is inheriting from object class, and you don't have to have this exception class here. So you are just writing extends exception. And actually we are done now. So we have now our exception that has all the methods and all the variables that are already written within exception class. So please have a look at home on exception class, on runtime class, and error class, on those three classes. What kind of methods and variables do they have? And now we want to use this exception in a new class that is called bunny. So our bunny class will have one method that is of type static, public static void, and is called eat carrot. It has no statements inside, so we are just leave our curly braces empty. In our main class, we want to use our exception, and we say we want our main class to declare an exception. In order to declare an exception, we use the keyword throws, not throw, but throws. Throws, and now we are writing the name of exception, and this is this name, no more carrots exception. And now we are opening our curly braces. So don't forget this opening curly braces, that they are written after throws no more carrots exception part, and not as we usually write here after closing brace after arguments. And inside we are putting our eat carrot. So if we execute, then we don't see here anything, because we don't have any parameters, and we did not do here the full coding. However, this is an example first how you can create your own exceptions, and you do this when you are creating new class that extends the exception class, the superclass. So your exception will be a subclass, a child class of the superclass, parent class exception. And then you are using this exception already in your code. So, and actually here you're already using our first two options. So you may use it with this exception with try-catch block. You can use it with throws by throwing exception. If you want not only to declare this exception, how we did it, if you want actually to handle it, then you need to use throw new. One more thing that I wanted to tell you was how to receive some kind of additional information from your exception. So let us have a look on our try-catch, any try-catch example. Here, try-catch example. So we have opened try-catch 01 example. Now we want, if we execute it now, we see that we receive this exception, array index alpha bound exception. This is what we wanted to print here. Sometimes we want to have more information from the exception that is raised. And in this way, we can do the following. We are using the print line system out print line to print the following to the console. First, and we are putting here now just the name of that we gave to our exception. In this case it is E. We are printing it, and we receive some more information now. So you see here the full name of the exception and the line where the exception took place. So this is the main code, the main method. Next, what we can receive else, we can use, if you use some methods that are available from exceptions. If you write the name of your exception that you gave to exception, and you're putting dot, then you will see a lot of different messages here, methods here. So please go through them and try them out in Eclipse. I will use now get message, and you see that we are getting some messages. So with this message we are receiving the information on which line of the of our code the exception was raised. And another one that is print pretty helpful is when we want to print the stack trace. So this is the method that is here, print stack trace, exactly. And you see that we just calling this just without any system.out print line statement. And you receive now the whole trace for your method that you would receive if you would not handle the exception. What does it mean? It means for you, it means that when you are handling exceptions, first you are controlling the flow of your program and you are deciding on which part of the program, which statements, which information the user will receive. If the user enters some invalid inputs, you can prevent your program from crashing. You can save some data from the program. You can tell the user what kind of exception took place, or you can also define your own message that you want to show to the user. So this is very flexible. And now we are done with this section.